My parents added my brother to my $275,000 trust fund without asking, but they didn't know I'd already emptied every cent. Mom smirked. His kids need a house. Your money is family property now. I laughed and said, perfect. Let him buy a mansion with the 12 cents I left. Hello everyone, my name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 33 years old, and the first time my mother told me that my money belonged to the whole family, I laughed, not because it was funny, because I honestly thought she couldn't be serious. She stood in my kitchen with her arms folded. My father was beside her. My older brother, Derek, sat at the table scrolling through his phone. Mom looked at me and said, "We've decided to add Derek to your trust fund." I stared at her. Excuse me, she repeated herself. Your brother has children now. They need a house. That money was always meant for family. I slowly put down my coffee. Mom, that's my trust fund. She smiled. Exactly. Then she said the sentence that made me realize how little they understood about my life. Your money is family property now. I looked at Derek. He didn't even look embarrassed. He simply smiled. Honestly, Lauren, I could really use the help. I almost laughed again, because there was one very important thing none of them knew. The account they'd spent years treating like a future emergency fund for Derek wasn't worth $275,000 anymore. I'd already legally withdrawn every dollar I was entitled to. I'd invested it, built a life with it, and left exactly 12 cents in the original account. I looked at my mother, then at Derek, and finally at my father. I smiled. Awesome, let him buy a mansion with the 12 cents. The smile disappeared from Mom's face. But that wasn't even the beginning. The trust fund had been created when I was 18. My grandparents had established it for me after my grandfather passed away. The original amount was $275,000. It wasn't supposed to be a free-for-all. The documents were very clear. The money was intended to help me with education, housing, or starting a business once I reached the required age. My parents were trustees for administrative purposes, but the money was mine. At least, that's what I believed. Growing up, however, my parents had always treated my finances differently from Derek's. Derek was my older brother, 3 years older, charming, social, always in some kind of financial trouble. When he was 17, Dad bought him his first car. When I turned 17, I was told I should save for one. When Derek wanted to attend an expensive college, my parents helped him with tuition. When I received a scholarship, Mom said, "See, you always figure things out." Derek changed majors twice, dropped classes, eventually left school. Then he started a business with a friend. It lasted 11 months. My parents lost nearly $40,000 helping him. Nobody blamed him. Entrepreneurship is risky. When I started my own small design business, Dad asked, "Are you sure you're capable of managing it?" I learned something important. Derek's mistakes were treated as lessons. Mine were treated as evidence. So when I turned 25, I finally decided to take control of my future. I hired an independent attorney to review my trust. That conversation changed my life. She explained that I was the beneficiary. She explained which funds were available to me. She explained what documentation I needed. And she warned me about something else. Lauren, your parents don't have the same rights to this money that you do. I remember staring at her. They've always acted like it's theirs. She smiled. Then they've been mistaken. For the first time, I felt something I'd never felt around my family. Security. Over the next 2 years, I followed the trust documents carefully. I withdrew the funds that had legally become available to me. I didn't waste them. I didn't buy designer clothes. I didn't buy a sports car. I used the money as seed capital for my business. Then I invested the profits. I eventually bought a modest home, started a retirement account, built an emergency fund. Everything was documented. Everything was legal. And because I knew how my family thought, I kept the original trust account open. I left exactly 12 cents in it, not as revenge. At least, not initially. I simply didn't see a reason to close it. Then Derek had children, 3 of them, and suddenly, my parents became obsessed with my trust fund again. Mom called me one Sunday. "You know Derek's situation." "What situation?" "He has 3 children." "Okay, they need stability." "I'm sure they do. They need a bigger house." I immediately knew where this was going. "Mom, you don't need all that money." I laughed softly. "Which money?" "The trust." I didn't answer. She continued, "Your grandfather left it for the family." "No, he left it for me." "You're being selfish." I smiled. "I worked for everything else I have." "You have enough. Derek needs more." There it was, the family rule I'd known my entire life. If Derek needed something, I was supposed to have less. A month later, my parents came to my house. Derek came with them. His wife stayed in the car with the children. Mom placed a folder on my kitchen table. We've handled everything. I opened it. Inside were documents relating to a proposed change in the trust's beneficiary arrangements. I looked at Mom. What is this? We're adding Derek. You can't. Dad immediately said, we're the trustees. I shook my head. That doesn't mean you can rewrite the trust however you want. Mom rolled her eyes. Don't make this complicated. Derek leaned back in his chair. I don't even want all of it. I looked at him. How generous. He smiled. I just need enough for a down payment. Mom immediately added, the children deserve a proper home. I closed the folder. No. Dad's expression hardened. You don't get to make this decision. I absolutely do. You've always been difficult about money. No. I've always been careful with money. Mom slammed her hand against the table. Your brother has children. I know. 3 children. I can count. She glared at me. Then you understand why this is necessary. I slowly shook my head. No, it isn't. Dad leaned forward. That money was never supposed to be sitting there while your brother struggles. I almost smiled. You're right. It isn't sitting there. Mom stopped. What? I looked at her. You should check the account. Dad's expression changed. What did you do? I calmly answered. I used the money the way the trust allowed me to. Education, business, housing, investments. Everything was properly documented. Mom stared at me. How much is left? I took a sip of coffee. 12 cents. Derek laughed. Very funny. I'm not joking. Dad immediately pulled out his phone. He checked the account information, then checked again. His face slowly changed. Mom grabbed the phone. She stared at the screen. $0.12. Nothing else. She looked at me. You emptied it? I used what legally became available to me. You weren't supposed to. According to whom? She couldn't answer. Derek stood up. This is insane. I shrugged. Then don't rely on my money. Mom looked furious. You knew we were going to need it. No. I knew you wanted it. There's a difference. Dad pushed the folder across the table. This isn't over. I looked at him. It is for me. Mom's voice became cold. Your brother's children need a home. I smiled. Then you should help him buy one. She stared at me. You'll regret this. I calmly replied. I've regretted trusting people with my money before. I won't make that mistake twice. My parents left. Derek followed them. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. The next morning, my phone rang. The caller ID showed the law office of the attorney who had originally helped establish my trust. I answered. Hello? A calm voice said, Ms. Mitchell, we need to discuss your trust. My stomach tightened. Why? There was a pause. Because your parents contacted us yesterday. I closed my eyes. What did they say? They've made several claims about the withdrawals. I stood up. What kind of claims? The attorney's voice became serious. And there's something else. What? We discovered an amendment in the trust records that neither you nor I had previously seen. I froze. An amendment? Yes. It appears someone attempted to change the distribution terms several years ago. I gripped the edge of the counter. Who signed it? The attorney paused, then quietly said, That's exactly why I'm calling. Sometimes, the money your family thinks they can control isn't the most dangerous secret. It's the paperwork they've been hiding behind it. And as my attorney told me, there was an amendment buried in my trust records that I had never seen. I realized my parents hadn't simply planned to take my money. They may have been preparing for it years before I ever knew. I stood completely still. Who signed the amendment? My attorney, Megan, took a breath. Your parents? My stomach tightened. Can they do that? Not by themselves. That's why we're reviewing it. She continued carefully. The amendment appears to have been prepared when you were 21. I frowned. I was in college. Exactly. What does it say? That if you died before the trust was fully distributed, your remaining assets would be divided between your brother and his descendants. I stared at the wall. So they were planning for Derek to get my money if something happened to me. That's what the document appears to say. I felt sick, but I never signed it. You didn't need to. Your grandparents' original trust established certain powers for the trustees, but those powers were limited. Your parents appear to have exceeded them. I slowly sat down. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the amendment was never properly executed. I looked up. What? She smiled faintly. It has signatures, but it wasn't properly witnessed or notarized according to the trust's governing requirements. So, it's potentially invalid. I exhaled. For the first time that morning, I felt like I could breathe again. But Megan wasn't finished. There is something else. Of course there was. What? The amendment wasn't the only document your parents submitted. She opened another file. 3 years ago, they attempted to request a distribution from the trust. How much? $100,000. My mouth fell open. For Derek? She nodded. They claimed it was for an emergency housing expense. I laughed bitterly. Was it? No. What was it? A down payment on a business property. I closed my eyes. Derek had never told me. My parents had tried to take $100,000 from my trust without telling me. And they'd failed, only because the trustee requirements hadn't been met. I whispered, so they've been trying to access my money for years. Yes, and now they're trying again. Yes. Megan closed the folder. Lauren, I recommend that we formally remove your parents from any remaining administrative role. I nodded. Do it? She smiled. I already prepared the paperwork. For the first time, I felt something close to relief. That afternoon, my mother called. I almost didn't answer. I did. Hello. Her voice was cold. Your attorney called us. I expected she would. You had no right. I laughed quietly. No right to protect my own trust. Your grandfather wanted the family taken care of. My grandfather created the trust for me. He loved Derek too. I never said he didn't. Then why are you doing this? I looked out my window. Because every time Derek needs something, you decide I should provide it. Silence. Then Mom said, his children are innocent. I know. They deserve better. Then help them. We can't. That's not my responsibility. She began crying. You've become so selfish. I answered quietly. No, I've become careful. You taught me that. She hung up. I thought that would be the last conversation. It wasn't. That evening, Derek showed up at my house, alone. I opened the door, but didn't invite him inside. What do you want? He looked exhausted. I need to apologize. I waited. He rubbed his hands together. I didn't know Mom and Dad had tried to take the money before. I believed him. And now I know. He looked down. They told me the trust was basically family money. I shook my head. Did you believe that? I wanted to. That honesty surprised me. He continued, I've made a mess of my finances. I know. I owe more than I can afford. That's unfortunate. He looked at me. You don't have to help. I nodded. Correct? I know. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Derek quietly said, I'm sorry. For what? For letting Mom and Dad convince me that your success was something I deserved. I looked at him. That was probably the first completely honest thing he'd ever said to me. I didn't forgive him immediately, but I didn't shut the door either. Get financial counseling. He nodded. I will. And don't ever ask me for money again. I won't. He turned to leave, then stopped. Lauren? Yeah? I hope you know. I never wanted to take your life away. I smiled sadly. You didn't. You just kept accepting things that should never have been offered to you. He nodded, then walked away. 2 weeks later, the trust amendment was officially declared invalid. My parents were removed from their administrative roles. The remaining 12 cents was transferred into an account under my sole control. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was the principle. For years, my family had acted as though my financial independence was temporary, as though eventually I'd be required to hand everything back. That illusion was finally gone. Then something unexpected happened. Megan called. I received a letter from the trust's original attorney. Okay, he wants to meet you. Why? He says your grandfather left something that wasn't included in the trust paperwork you originally received. My heart started beating faster. Something else? Yes. What? He left a sealed letter. Addressed to you. I met the attorney the following week. He placed a small envelope on the desk. My grandfather's handwriting was unmistakable. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was short, only a few paragraphs. He wrote, Lauren, if you're reading this, you're old enough to understand something I learned late in life. Money doesn't reveal character. It reveals what people believe they're entitled to. I created this trust because I wanted you to have something that could never be taken from you simply because you were the quieter child. I stopped reading. Tears filled my eyes. Then I continued. Your parents may love you. Your brother may love you. But love does not give anyone ownership over your future. Use what I gave you wisely. And never let guilt become the price of belonging. I folded the letter against my chest. For years, I'd wondered why my grandfather had created the trust specifically for me. Now I understood. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough. Epilogue. 3 years have passed. My trust is now managed by an independent fiduciary. My parents have no access, no authority, and no ability to change anything without my knowledge. Derek eventually sold his expensive car, moved into a smaller house, started working with a financial advisor. He still struggles sometimes, but he stopped expecting me to solve his problems. His children are doing well, and I occasionally see them. I love them, but loving my nieces and nephews doesn't mean funding their parents. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. We speak occasionally. There are still uncomfortable conversations. But something important changed. They finally ask before assuming. And sometimes, they actually accept my answer. My mother once said, "I wish we'd handled the trust differently." I answered, "So do I. But at least we know now." She nodded. "Know what?" I smiled. "That family isn't an ATM." My thoughts. For years, I thought saying no to my family made me selfish. It didn't. It made me responsible for my own future. Helping someone because you genuinely want to is generosity. Being pressured into surrendering what belongs to you is something completely different. And I've learned one lesson that I will never forget. Your family can love you and still feel entitled to you. That's why boundaries matter. My grandfather didn't leave me $275,000 just to give me money. He left me something much more valuable: the freedom to build a life without waiting for someone else to approve of it. And when my parents tried to turn my future into family property, I finally understood the difference between being generous and being used. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can leave your family isn't money. It's a boundary they can no longer cross.